I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We are continuing in the Gospels again. This is just immediately after the triumphal entry, which was a few days after Mary anointed Christ with the spikenard ointment. We are just before the Passover. We're in the few days just before the Passover. Now, if we follow Mark timeline, which I think Mark has it more accurate, he had the triumphal entry. He then goes back to Bethany. The next day he comes in and he contends with the Jews and leaves cursing the fig tree. And then he comes back the day after that again, and again contends with the Jews. So that's our timeline here. And we're going to read all this again in Luke. But we want to read the same stuff we read in Matthew and Mark. And in Luke, it is in chapters 19 and 20. So we're going to read the end of chapter 19 and the beginning of chapter 20. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. So Luke chapter 19, verses 41 through 48. And when he was come near, he beheld the city, and wept over it, saying, If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this day, thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace. But now they are hid from thine eyes. For the days shall come upon thee, that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And he went into the temple, and began to cast out them that sold therein, and them that bought, saying unto them, It is written, My house is the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And he taught daily in the temple. But the chief priests and the scribes and the chief of the people sought to destroy him, and could not find what they might do, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. Now, following in Luke, this would apparently happen during, this lament over Jerusalem happens during the triumphal entry. As he's on his way into Jerusalem, he starts lamenting. And then he has the triumphal entry, leads him to the temple, where he cleanses the temple. That's just like in Matthew. And I'm not sure which one is going to be more accurate in the timeline, Mark or Luke. I still lean more towards Mark's timeline. But this lament, he's saying, if you understood the blessings that will be yours, and he's talking to the city, that the people, if they understood, then they might have faith. They might turn to God, but because of their unbelief, God will not reveal the truth to them. And then he prophesies the destruction of Jerusalem. Not one stone left standing on another, be laid down to the ground. And of course, the people are all coming to Christ to hear him teach. And again, the Pharisees are seeking to kill him. So now, we go to Luke chapter 20, verses 1 through 8. And it came to pass that on one of those days, as he taught the people in the temple, and preached the gospel, the chief priests and the scribes came upon him with the elders, and spake unto him, saying, Tell us, by what authority doest thou these things? Or who is he that gave thee this authority? And he answered and said unto them, I will also ask you one thing, and answer me. The baptism of John, was it of heaven or of men? And they reasoned with themselves, saying, If we shall say from heaven, he will say, Why then believed ye him not? But if we say of men, all the people will stone us, for they be persuaded that John was a prophet. And they answered that they could not tell whence it was. And Jesus said unto them, Neither tell I you by what authority I do these things. The same contention as in Matthew and Mark. And as I said when reading Matthew, this is Christ telling the Pharisees that he's done with them. So you do not have honest discourse. You are constantly trying to find ways of tripping me up. You're trying to catch me. You're trying to lay traps for me, and I'm not doing it anymore. And he shuts them up. Now, in Matthew, he followed this up with a parable of the two sons. Mark, we have no follow-up. In Luke, we do have a follow-up, but it is a different parable, and so we're going to do that in a separate video. For now, we're going to look at the Joseph Smith translation in Luke. Verse 45, change the that to who. Verse 46, it is now a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. In 20, verse 2, that is changed to who. In verse 3, instead of and answer me, it is just answer me. In verse 6, we remove the word but from the beginning. It is just and if we say. And then for they be persuaded is corrected to they are persuaded. And then in verse 8, we again take out the and at the beginning. It is just Jesus said unto them. And then it is by what authority I do those things. Minor grammatical corrections, nothing important. Now you may notice that in Luke here there is no mention of Christ cursing the fig tree. I still have not quite figured out what that meant, what the purpose of that was, but Luke doesn't include it. But on the other hand, Matthew and Mark do not include Christ's lamentation over Jerusalem. So this difference here is not really significant. It's not a contradiction of anything, it's just that it's interesting that Luke includes the lamentation, but he doesn't include the fig tree. So we leave that here, and our next reading is in we're going to combine multiple Gospels again, so I will see you there.